Our planet is warming. The evidence is undeniable, and the signs are all around us. From the poles to the equator, no region is untouched by the rising temperatures. This is not a drill. The urgency of the situation cannot be overstated. We are facing a global crisis that demands immediate and sustained action. It is the stark reality we face. The scientific community has been sounding the alarm for decades, and now the impacts are becoming increasingly visible and severe. The consequences of climate change are already upon us. Communities around the world are experiencing the devastating effects of extreme weather events, from hurricanes and typhoons to droughts and wildfires. Glaciers are melting at alarming rates. These ancient ice formations, which have existed for millennia, are disappearing before our eyes, contributing to rising sea levels and altering ecosystems. Sea levels are rising, threatening coastal communities. Low-lying areas are particularly vulnerable, with millions of people at risk of losing their homes and livelihoods. Extreme weather events, from scorching heat waves to devastating floods, are becoming more frequent and intense. These events not only cause immediate destruction, but also have long-term impacts on infrastructure, agriculture, and human health. We are at a critical juncture. The decisions we make today will determine the future of our planet and the well-being of future generations. The time for action is now. We must come together as a global community to address this crisis head-on. Every individual, organization, and government has a role to play. The primary culprit behind this global crisis is greenhouse gas emissions. These emissions, primarily from burning fossil fuels, are driving the rapid changes we are witnessing in our climate. Primarily carbon dioxide, these emissions act like a blanket, trapping heat in the Earth's atmosphere and causing the planet to warm. This process, known as the greenhouse effect, is exacerbated by human activities. The burning of fossil fuels for energy is a major contributor to these emissions. Coal, oil, and natural gas have powered our economies for centuries, but at a tremendous cost to the environment. Deforestation, industrial processes, and agriculture also play a significant role. The clearing of forests for agriculture and development releases stored carbon, while industrial livestock farming produces significant methane emissions. The urgency of the situation cannot be overstated. We are running out of time to prevent the most catastrophic impacts of climate change. Immediate and sustained action is required. We must act decisively to reduce our emissions and mitigate the worst effects of climate change. Transitioning to renewable energy sources, such as solar and wind, is a crucial step in this process. The Paris Agreement, a landmark international accord, aims to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This ambitious goal requires unprecedented cooperation and commitment from all nations. To achieve this ambitious goal, we need innovative solutions and a collective commitment to change. Investing in renewable energy, improving energy efficiency, and adopting sustainable practices are essential. This is where carbon markets come in, offering a potential pathway to a more sustainable future. By putting a price on carbon, we can incentivize reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and drive investment in cleaner technologies. Grassroots movements and community-led initiatives are also vital. Empowering local communities and supporting youth climate activists can drive meaningful change from the ground up. The fight against climate change requires a united effort. By working together, sharing knowledge, and supporting each other, we can build a more resilient and sustainable future for all. The future is in our hands. Let us rise to the challenge and take bold, decisive action to protect our planet and ensure a livable world for generations to come. Imagine a global marketplace where countries and companies can trade emissions like commodities. This concept is not just a futuristic dream, but a reality that is shaping the way we approach environmental sustainability. This is the basic idea behind carbon markets. These markets are designed to create a financial incentive for reducing greenhouse gas emissions by assigning a monetary value to carbon reductions. They are designed to incentivize emissions reductions by putting a price on carbon. Let's break it down. By making carbon emissions a tradable commodity, we can encourage businesses and nations to innovate and invest in cleaner technologies. At the heart of carbon markets are carbon credits. These credits act as a permit allowing the holder to emit a certain amount of carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases. Each credit represents 1 ton of carbon dioxide equivalent that has been reduced or removed from the atmosphere. This means that for every credit purchased, there is a corresponding reduction in emissions somewhere in the world. These credits can be generated through a variety of projects such as renewable energy installations, forest conservation efforts, or energy efficiency improvements. For instance, a company might earn credits by installing solar panels or by protecting a forest that absorbs carbon dioxide. Here's how the trading works. Companies or countries that exceed their emissions targets can purchase carbon credits from those that have successfully reduced their emissions. This creates a dynamic market where the price of carbon credits can fluctuate based on supply and demand. This creates a financial incentive for polluters to clean up their act. By making it more expensive to pollute, companies are encouraged to invest in cleaner technologies and practices. It also provides funding for projects that benefit the environment. The money generated from selling carbon credits can be used to fund renewable energy projects, reforestation efforts, and other initiatives that help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. However, carbon markets are not without their critics. Some environmentalists argue that these markets can be exploited by companies looking to avoid making real changes to their operations. Some argue that they allow wealthy nations and corporations to simply buy their way out of reducing their own emissions. This can lead to a situation where the rich can afford to pollute, while the burden of reducing emissions falls on poorer nations and communities. Others question the effectiveness of these markets in achieving real and lasting emissions reductions. Critics point out that some projects that generate carbon credits may not deliver the promised environmental benefits. Despite the controversies, carbon markets remain a key tool in the global fight against climate change. They offer a flexible and scalable solution that can be adapted to different countries and industries. They offer a market-based approach to addressing this complex challenge. By leveraging the power of the market, we can drive innovation and investment in the technologies and practices needed to build a more sustainable future. Kenya, a country renowned for its breathtaking landscapes and vibrant wildlife, is emerging as a front-runner in the global carbon market. With its vast potential for renewable energy, commitment to forest conservation, and innovative climate policies, Kenya is well-positioned to play a significant role in this evolving market. One of Kenya's key strengths lies in its abundant renewable energy resources. The country boasts immense geothermal potential, with vast underground reserves of heat that can be harnessed to generate electricity. Kenya is also blessed with ample sunshine, making it ideal for solar energy production. By tapping into these clean energy sources, Kenya can significantly reduce its reliance on fossil fuels and slash its carbon footprint. Forest conservation is another area where Kenya is making strides. Forests act as vital carbon sinks, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it in their trees and soil. Recognizing the importance of preserving these natural carbon reserves, Kenya has implemented ambitious programs to combat deforestation and promote sustainable forest management practices. Kenya's commitment to combating climate change is not new. The country has long recognized the importance of preserving its rich biodiversity and natural resources, which are vital not only for its own people, but for the global community as well. The country has been actively involved in international climate negotiations for decades. Kenyan delegates have consistently played a crucial role in shaping global climate policies, advocating for the interests of developing nations, and pushing for more equitable solutions. From the early days of the Kyoto Protocol to the landmark Paris Agreement, Kenya has consistently championed the need for ambitious climate action. The nation's leaders have been vocal about the urgent need to address climate change, emphasizing that it is a global challenge requiring collective action. The Kyoto Protocol, adopted in 1997, marked a significant step forward in global efforts to address climate change. It was the first international treaty to set legally binding emissions reduction targets, primarily for developed countries. It placed legally binding emissions reduction targets on developed countries, recognizing their historical responsibility for greenhouse gas emissions. This was a pivotal moment, as it acknowledged the disproportionate impact that industrialized nations have had on the planet's climate. While Kenya, as a developing country, did not have binding emissions reduction targets under the Kyoto Protocol, it actively participated in the Clean Development Mechanism, CDM. This mechanism allowed Kenya to implement projects that reduced emissions while promoting sustainable development. The CDM allowed developed countries to meet their emissions reduction targets by investing in emissions-reducing projects in developing countries. This created a win-win situation where developed nations could offset their emissions, and developing countries like Kenya could receive much-needed funding and technology. This provided a valuable source of funding for sustainable development projects in Kenya and other developing nations. These projects not only helped reduce emissions but also contributed to economic growth, job creation, and improved living standards for local communities. The Paris Agreement, adopted in 2015, ushered in a new era of global climate action. Unlike the Kyoto Protocol, which focused on developed countries, the Paris Agreement requires participation from all nations, making it a more inclusive and comprehensive framework. Unlike the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement requires all countries, regardless of their development status, to submit nationally determined contributions, NDCs, outlining their plans to reduce emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. Kenya has been proactive in this regard, submitting ambitious NDCs that reflect its commitment to sustainable development and climate resilience. Kenya's NDCs include a range of initiatives aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions and enhancing climate resilience. These initiatives encompass renewable energy projects, reforestation efforts, and community-based climate adaptation programs. The country is also investing in education and awareness campaigns to empower its citizens, particularly the youth, to take action against climate change. In addition to its international commitments, Kenya is implementing numerous domestic policies to combat climate change. These include promoting sustainable agricultural practices, improving water conservation, and developing climate-resilient infrastructure. By integrating climate considerations into its national development plans, Kenya is working to ensure a sustainable future for its people. Kenya's journey in climate agreements highlights the importance of international cooperation and solidarity. As the world continues to grapple with the impacts of climate change, Kenya's active participation in global climate negotiations serves as a testament to the power of collective action. By working together, nations can create a more sustainable and resilient future for all.